On August 30th, 1892, the 2-year-old steel-hulled lake freighter, Western Reserve, was making a routine voyage across Lake Superior on her way to Two Harbors, Minnesota, when storm clouds built over the lake, indicating that a summer storm was on its way, although it was nothing that the relatively new Western Reserve couldn't handle. There was little cause for concern for the crew of the freighter. Shortly afterward, as the Western Reserve was steaming through the huge waves and heavy winds, the hull of the freighter began to break apart, and within minutes, the freighter would be at the bottom of the lake. Out of the 32 people on board, only the ship's wheelsman survived. As of this video's release, the wreck of the Western Reserve remains undiscovered, and the cause of her unexpected sinking remains unknown. Before we continue, if you are a fan of this channel, I highly recommend that you check out the Top Impressive line merch store. There, you will find t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, and much more to show off your support of this channel. Plus, we're adding more to the store all the time. Go check it out at top-impressive.creator-spring.com or use the link in the description. And now, back to the video. In August of 1890, the Cleveland Shipbuilding Company began construction on 2 nearly identical freighters for 3 Ohio lumber merchants, William H. Gilcher, Joseph C. Gilchrist, and Randall E. Shuck, who were currently in the process of developing a fleet of Great Lakes freighters. One of the 2 freighters being built by the shipyard for these 3 men was the Western Reserve. The other was the slightly larger W.H. Gilcher, named after one of their 3 owners. Both of them were some of the first lake freighters with steel hulls instead of iron or wood. The Western Reserve was launched on August 20th, 1890, and her sister ship, the W.H. Gilcher, was launched a few months later on December 18th. Both ships were some of the largest freighters on the lakes at the time. The Western Reserve came in at 2,392 gross registered tons. She measured 301 feet, or 92 meters in length, and had a beam of 41 feet, or 12 meters. Her sister ship, the W.H. Gilcher, was slightly larger at 2,415 gross registered tons, and she measured 302 feet, or 92 meters in length. For the next 2 years, both freighters transported cargo such as iron ore, coal, grain, and much more all over the Great Lakes. But that all changed in August of 1892, when the Western Reserve set out on what would be her last voyage. On August 28, 1892, the Western Reserve, under the command of Captain Albert Myers, departed Cleveland bound for Two Harbors, Minnesota, to pick up a load of iron ore. She made her way through Lake Erie and Lake Huron without any issues, but after they passed through the Sioux Locks and entered Lake Superior on August 30th, the ship found itself in the midst of an unusual summer gale, and the freighter was battered by heavy winds and waves. For some time, Captain Myers had his ship hug Lake Superior's southern shore to get a little protection from the storm, but soon he changed course to sail into the open lake, confident that the relatively new freighter could handle the storm. On this voyage, the Western Reserve was empty and riding high, but despite that, the ship was punished by heavy northwest winds and massive waves that crashed over the deck. Finally, at roughly 9 p.m., the Western Reserve had reached her limit. Almost everyone on board heard a loud bang come from the ship's hull. The freighter's hull had cracked just forward of her boiler room. The wind and waves began tearing the ship apart, and soon water began pouring into her holds. The gap between the 2 sides of the ship only increased as more water entered the ship, and many of the freighter's steel support trusses began to fail. The crew immediately began to launch the ship's lifeboats, and despite the fact that the ship was rapidly sinking, the evacuation was calm. Then, just 10 minutes after the ship's hull began to fail, with her engines still running, the Western Reserve slipped below the surface of Lake Superior. Shortly before the ship's final plunge, one of the lifeboats capsized in the massive waves. The crew in the other boat came to pick up anyone in the water, but only 2 crewmen were found: Carl Myers, the son of Captain Albert Myers, and the ship's wheelsman, Harry Stewart. After the 2 men were brought aboard the lifeboat, they began the 60-mile journey to shore. As they made the journey, the boat was severely overloaded, and was just a foot above the waterline, and the heavy waves began to fill the boat with water. The men in the boat did whatever they could to remove the water, but these efforts proved to be ineffective. Soon, night fell, and almost all hope of rescue was lost. But soon, the people in the boat saw the lights of a nearby freighter. They did whatever they could to signal the crew of the freighter. They tried screaming to get the passing ship's crew attention. After that didn't work, they tried lighting a match that could guide the ship to them, but the match was too wet to ignite, and soon the ship's lights vanished on the horizon. By morning, the storm was still raging, but the crew on the boat could see land in the distance. The waves pushed the boat towards land, but when they were within a mile of the shore, another massive wave caused the boat to capsize, throwing all of its occupants into the lake. For a moment, the water was filled with screaming men and women, until everything was silent. 24-year-old wheelsman Harry Stewart looked around and realized he was alone. He clung to a life preserver he grabbed a hold of when he got dumped out of the boat. He had little energy to make it to shore, but he was determined he could make it. After 2 hours, he finally made it to the beach. He laid on the beach for almost an hour, before he finally began to walk to the Deer Park Life-Saving Station, which he estimated was 10 miles away. After walking through the woods, he finally made it to the Deer Park Life-Saving Station, and he told one of the employees, Benjamin Trudeau, about what he experienced. Shortly thereafter, the crew of the life-saving station went down to the beach to search for any traces of the ship or her crew. They found one of the ship's lifeboats, but it was empty, and the bodies of some of the ship's crew. Soon, many theories emerged about what could have caused the Western Reserve to sink in such circumstances. However, just 2 months later, her sister ship, the W.H. Gilcher, met her own fate as well. On October 28th, the W.H. Gilcher was sailing from Buffalo, New York to Milwaukee with a load of coal when she suddenly disappeared with all hands after passing through the Straits of Mackinac. It was determined that both freighters were constructed with brittle steel, which could fail in cold water. As of this video's release, the wrecks of both the Western Reserve and the W.H. Gilcher remain undiscovered. The sole survivor of the Western Reserve, Harry Stewart, soon returned to sailing on the lakes and even earned the rank of captain. He passed away in 1938 at the age of 70. Unfortunately, the Western Reserve and the W.H. Gilcher are just 2 of many ships on the Great Lakes that remain undiscovered and/or were lost with all hands. The first decade of the 20th century saw several ships on the lakes go down with all hands that are still undiscovered as of the release of this video, such as the freighter D.M. Clemson, which vanished on Lake Superior in December of 1908, as well as the car ferry Marquette and Bessemer No. 2, which vanished on Lake Erie in December of 1909. To this day, the Western Reserve is mostly forgotten about, and it reminds us of the fury of Lake Superior. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you'll never miss any new uploads from this channel. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.